He was out there, wasn't he? Anyway. Good afternoon, councillors. I declare this meeting open. Welcome to you and to members of the public and our officers. Under announcements, I just want to place on record our appreciation to the Bunbury RSL sub-branch for their fantastic 2017 Anzac Day services and all things military. I met recently, or last week, with the Lieutenant Colonel Bob Colligan, who is the commanding officer of the 11th 28th Battalion. For those of you who can remember, back in the 2nd of March 2003, the city granted that battalion freedom of entry. They've never exercised it, but they're going to later this year. So that's something to look forward to. Last Friday, the city signed the MOU with Landcorp for the land promotion and marketing. And I also want to record our appreciation to the Bunbury Senior High School Shed Works team, who over the last few days, late last week and today, and yesterday I think, Mr Harris, they've been planting 4,300 Australian native plants in the Wally Crowd Reserve. So well done to them. It's a fantastic effort. I haven't heard from Councillor McGuinness. I thought I saw him outside, but maybe I was. He's in Sydney. So here's an apology then. Declarations of interest. There are a few that have been included from last week's briefing session. They're not shown there, but they will be. Councillor Cook, 1042, he's declared an impartiality interest. Councillor Miguel has declared a financial interest in 1042. Councillor Jones has declared an impartiality interest with item 10.42, as she is the chairman of ACWest. Councillor Steck declares a financial interest in item 10.42. Councillor Steck declares an impartiality interest with respect to item 10.4.1. Are there any others, councillors? Councillor Jones?
10.4.3. So my declarations of interest are 10.4.2 and 10.4.3 for the same reason.
Thank you, Councillor Warnock. (10.4.3). Councillor Warnock. Is yours an impartiality interest? And what was the other one? 10.4.2, 10.4.3. Impartiality interest. All good. Thank you. We have no questions. Someone move the confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. Councillor Cook, Councillor Giles, all in favour? That's carried unanimously, thank you. Are there any petitions tonight, councillors? Now, we have requests for presentations. Jane and Warren Clough wish to make a presentation with respect to item 10.4.1. Those who approve, please indicate. That's approved. Mr Smith wishes to make a presentation with respect to item 10.4.2. Those who approve, please indicate. Those against? Sorry, Councillor Warnock. You're against? Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's approved. Actually, it's 6 all. No pressure, Councillor Steele. If Mr Smith limits himself to 5 minutes, which I will insist, I'll approve it. So that's approved. Okay, so I've got more declarations of interest papers in front of me than I've ever seen before, Mr CEO. What's going on? Thank you. So coming out, councillors, we have 10.4.1, 10.4.2, 10.4.3, and that's it. Are there any others that anyone wishes to debate tonight? Councillor Jones? Yep. Any further? Can I have someone move the balance? Councillor Cook, Councillor Hayward, all those in favour? That's carried unanimously, thank you. We'll go to 10.3.1. Can I have someone move the executive recommendation? Question, Councillor Giles?
Thank you. Could we please take these one at a time?
The three points there, sure. Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Second up. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Hayward.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. I've said in this chamber previously that I don't think we do enough for Indigenous people in Bunbury, and here is a fantastic opportunity to really engage Indigenous young people at a time when their lives are being shaped. And we heard that fantastic story and about the role of Clontarf Academy and what it's been able to achieve over the years and what it can achieve in our neighbourhoods. I think there are a few programs that have the runs on the board like this particular program does, and I think it's absolutely worthy of our support. I note that we'll be looking for those opportunities. We'll be directing the CEO to look for those opportunities in terms of supporting this foundation, and I just think that the difference it makes to these young people's lives is so fantastic, we just simply cannot not be a part of it. So I just really encourage us all to get behind this program and make a real stand for Indigenous young people in our community. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor, and I'll address each of these items singularly. Number one, recognising the contribution that the Clontarf Foundation makes to the community. Yes, we're doing that. And we're already providing in-kind support through traineeships and work experience. I expect that to continue. The second part, request the CEO to explore partnership opportunities with the Clontarf Foundation. I think it's an excellent idea. There's no commitment there other than for us to work with them to develop suitable health and fitness programs based at the Southwest Sports Centre, part of our contribution to all parts of our community. And the third part, we're only at this stage considering the request from the Clontarf Foundation. This will be considered in our development of our budget, 17-18. All of these have no commitment other than the commitment we're already making, and a third commitment that we've been asked to consider also. I consider that they're all worthy, and I'm particularly grateful that we can take them separately, Mr Mayor, because it enables us to provide the appropriate support where councillors feel fit, and to consider other items at a later date. So ask councillors to support 1, 2 and 3. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Steck.
Thank you, sir. I can't turn this on, so no. Thank you. Look, I will say, first up, that I really do support Indigenous support to this community. First and foremost, absolutely, 100%. But when it comes to an entity that comes to our community that promotes themselves above and beyond our community, I have to have a good look at what's going on. So and being involved in this community as a local government member for 12 years, it's easy for me to pick up the telephone and ask a few questions, and also ask how things are travelling. First and foremost, Indigenous programs that are part of this program are second to none, I agree. But having said that, we haven't offered the same opportunity to the same programs that currently exist in our current council. And for that, I really struggle to say, well, hang on, we should just go down this path. And indeed, the Southwest scope of prosperity and the categories of not-for-profits, and indeed what they can and can't deliver for communities. And even today I went to a committee meeting where they wanted more opportunities and more funding to be able to provide for better steering of young youth in this community. So I'm just saying that this has come about within a 1.5, 2-page report without anything else of any worth in relation to what we do, what the community does, and what we can offer this community in a better kind of way for that kind of money. So I'm just saying, realistically, you've got schools that allow showers for kids because they're homeless parents. You've got schools that give breakfast for kids for homeless parents. You've got schools that give all of this stuff. And whilst this is really, really wonderful things, you know, you can't get a word out of me that says, no, it's not good. What I'm saying is we have local communities, local opportunities, we've got local things that are offering the same, and yet they are being sideswiped. So just be careful. That's all I'm saying.
Speaker 4. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I can't accept that we're sideswiping anybody. This is any organisation that came almost with the same 1, 2 and 3, I imagine we would support. We're not being asked to do anything different. Largely our support, as Councillor Kelly pointed out, in 1 and 2 are things we are already doing. It's just a case of formalising that. And the third one is a decision for our financial plan. There's no decision being made tonight about whether it be funded or not. So really there's no risk in supporting it, I don't think at all. And if it was the soup kitchen or somebody else came with a similar item, I imagine I would be arguing that we should support that as well. So I'd urge councillors to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put number 1, all in favour. Those against, that's carried unanimously. Number 2, all in favour. Those against, 1 against, that's carried. 3, I'll put all in favour. Those against, that's carried.
Report, please.
Those against number 3 were Councillors Jones, Giles, Steck, Steele, McCleary. Thank you. We move to 10.4.1 and I invite Jane and Warren Clough to come to the podium. Are you both speaking or one of you? Okay, is that you? So there's a 5-minute limit. There's a clock here somewhere in front of me. Everyone's a comedian tonight. That's good. Carry on. You've wasted 30 seconds. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Was contained in clause 513, paragraph 3.1. The parapet wall is over height specified in the R code. As such, it does dominate the area. It does significantly reduce the solar access to the adjacent property, and it does have a serious impact on the damp and ventilation of the adjacent pathway and affects the residential amenity to the outside area near the wall, which is used as a closed drying area. Second point, the parapet wall is over height and does not comply with the R code. The parapet wall is sloping with a high point of 3.77 metres. I've got a whole stack of figures here, but the bottom line is when you compound the height requirement with the landfill, The wall is over height by 0.68 metres at the high point and on an average of 0.8 metres. The assessment states that this wall does not dominate the area, and with all due respect, I believe that a parapet wall built on the boundary of a property, which is over height to council regulations to that extent, does have an overbearing impact on any adjacent property and does have a serious impact on the solar access of the adjacent property and does impact on the residential amenity of the adjacent property. Number point 3, the significant reduction in the solar access and the major impact on 50% of the private bedroom space. The proposed parapet wall runs north-south in direction with a touch of north-east, therefore the sun axis will be perpendicular to the wall. I note to council that the assessment states that the adjoining dwelling has 2 ground floor windows on the side east elevation, which are both high-level windows and therefore not deemed major openings for the R code. And I also note that the assessment states that it would maintain adequate sun and ventilation to the adjoining building and open space. I do not know how the R code defines major opening, and I don't know how they define adequate sun and ventilation, but I do know that with the sun axis perpendicular to the proposed structure, then the resulting access to direct sunlight to the 2 windows and the affected area will be restricted to the time when the sun passes directly overhead, which is basically 1 hour a day. And I note that because the sun will be basically coming straight down at that point, the penetration of direct sunlight through the windows will be reduced to 0. I also note to council that while these windows may not be considered major openings, they are still the only access of direct sunlight to the adjacent building. I note to council that as the adjacent building is a 2-bedroom construction and as the affected area is a downstairs bedroom, thus the resulting reduced solar access will be 50% of the habitable private living space. I note that the assessment uses words and phrases such as maintain adequate sun, and it is considered that proposed variation would not have any unreasonable impact. And with all due respect to council, I think that any assessment that would deem an impact of 50% to the habitable living space is as minor, is far from the mark. With a parapet wall in this location, this solar access will be significantly reduced, and with an oversized parapet wall, the access will be severely reduced. Point 4, inadequate sunlight to the adjacent pathway. How am I going? Creates moisture issue and a slip risk. Similarly, the parapet wall will severely impact the ability of the adjoining space to drain and ventilate to remove moisture. And this area is a walkway and a closed drying area, and as such, not only is the residential amenity impacted, it also creates a significant safety and slip risk on the adjacent pathway. Point 5, the proposed dwelling has ample space on the north and east, easily accommodating a site setback off the west boundary without impacting the residential amenity of the proposed dwelling. The area is approximately, the alfresco area is approximately 5 metres wide, so it can easily accommodate a 1 metre shift of the proposed dwelling and still maintain an alfresco area of around 4 metres wide. And the alfresco area runs into the lawn, making the total length 23.9 metres, in total an area of around 95 metres squared. I would also seek clarification of my rights in reference to the parapet wall for future plans, i.e. can I paint it? Can I drill into it to attach something to it, such as an ornamental improvement? Can I attach a ledger board for an arbour or a trellis? Or will there be a restriction or future plans to the enclosed north outdoor area of number 1 Buswell Street? In conclusion, I ask Council to conform to the design principles of the R Code and reject this application for a variation to the allowable height of the parapet wall, and request that the applicant proponent review the proposed plan in reference to a setback of 1 metre from the boundary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Have a seat. Yep, thanks. Before I ask for a mover, through the CEO, can I ask the Director of Planning, the officers have given us assurance that this there is discretion here, that we can approve it. And the other question relates to proposed structures on their side of the parapet wall. If you have an answer for that, I'd like to hear it. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll address the second question first. the parapet wall is within the boundaries of your adjoining neighbour's block of land, so therefore it is their parapet wall, it's their house, so you wouldn't be able to affix, attach, drill or make any physical alterations to the wall per se. It's their wall. However, in relation to painting, I'll have to clarify for you an absolute position on you for legally, and I can take that question on notice and I'll discuss it with, if you'd like to come in, we can discuss that with the team leader of building, which is David Brightwell. But generally speaking, without the adjoining neighbours' consent, you wouldn't touch the adjoining wall. But we find that most people are quite accommodating of someone putting a texture coat or a painting surface over that, and there's many ways to affix features without actually impacting on the wall itself, so we can get some solutions there. With respect to the question on the veracity of approving this, it is an expectation that when an applicant does not wish to comply with the deemed to comply, that is, they wish to adjust or mediate or moderate or design or change the design from the deemed to comply, which we would always be able to approve under delegation, we are still obliged to entertain the application in accordance with an assessment against the principles. On that, it is a subjective decision whether or not it's too much or not enough. Our professional assessment, given what we know is precedent in law, is an approvable proposal.
Thank you. Someone prepared to move the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Steck. Seconder? Councillor McCleary. Councillor Steck?
No, so I think the executive has really explained everything well.
Councillor McCleary?
Can I just say that if you go to the advice notice, Mr Mayor, it says this is a development approval plan.
Is there a speaker against? I'll put it all in favour. Those against? One. That's carried. So that's approved. 10.4.2. There's a few declarations of financial interest, so I'll let you depart. Murray, is yours financial? Oh, sorry, you're just closing the door. Thank you very much. You do that so well. Mr. Smith, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Councillors. On behalf of myself and my wife, I made a submission in relation to a Picton Crescent, and as the executor of the estate, I made a submission in relation to a property in Hillcrest Street. Part of my concern about Picton Crescent was the published map of the Bolters Hill Reserve between Withers Crescent and the private properties was shown mostly as road reserve, whereas in the previous documentation that Council put out in relation to the entire Bolters Hill Reserve from Bolters Hill effectively to Scott Street, it was much wider, and I suggested that it should be surveyed as to where the road reserve in Withers Crescent is, so we all knew exactly what was being retained in the Bolters Hill Reserve. The second issue that I raised was the broader issue of, in a major matter like shifting from TPS 7 to TPS 8, which has been on the go, I might say, for 6 years and was a few years overdue when it started in 2011, that there was an opportunity for Council to have a major look at the higgledy-piggledy allocation of R15 and R20 and the way in which the areas around activity centres are treated differently. I was also concerned that the solution to the fact that with the boundaries of the City of Bunbury remaining where they are, that the only way we're going to increase the population of Bunbury is to have higher density. The Council seemed to be about to adopt a position that really saw mixed business, which would have ground floor of business and upper floors of residential, including along Spencer Street, was part of a solution to that issue. If you take the example of the northern end of Victoria Street and Marsden Hill, I do not believe that the use of that system to try and increase densities has worked at all. It's a higgledy-piggledy failure in many respects. And if we're going to start doing that along Spencer Street as well. But in the end, I was disappointed with the nature of the response. If you take the example of Turner Street is R20 as you turn into it from Stirling Street on the right-hand side. You then go into part of Turner Street, which is R15. You go into Picton Crescent, which is R15. You go into Money Street, which is got 2 blocks of flats, which don't seem to be reflected in the current proposed zonings. And then in Parkfield Street, you go to R20. Sampson Road is R20. It was suggested last week that the reason for this odd sort of mixture of residential codes was reflecting the height of the land issue and the position of the land in relation to the hilly areas. If you look at the areas that I'm talking about, Scott Street is R15, Sampson Road R20, I just don't understand that. And if you really wanted to look at increasing densities, there was an opportunity, in my view, to look at the question of should R15 be the standard now, as it's been for generations, or should we be looking at R20 as being? But I'm not going to. I know I'm not going to get anywhere with this tonight. But the response to my submission was really to say, look, you can apply afterwards for rezoning. That is, all the individuals who are affected like we are will have to make separate applications. Whereas I thought the whole idea of having a TPS 8 was to resolve these sorts of issues en masse so that you actually make a major difference rather than the minor difference that I think you're going to affect as a result of this.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Someone prepared to move the executive recommendation? Councillor Kelly. Seconder? Councillor McCleary. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a long haul, long haul between TPS 7 and TPS 8, and I must say long, careful and professional consideration has been given to the evolution of this plan in what is really a brave new world of planning. When we ever look at a town plan strategy or a town plan scheme, we almost always must look for the greater good. I hear what Mr. Smith had to say, and I've heard what a lot of other people have had to say about the bits and pieces over this 65 square kilometres that we live in, and about how it may well or may not affect where they live. Where I live, I'm a rental, it's for someone else. Where I own, there will be no impact at all on what I do. However, we've got to a point now where we must draw a line and say, Town Plan Scheme 8, this is the future of Bunbury for the next X amount of years. Hopefully it won't be too long, as town plan schemes and the way the world evolves, things happen quite quickly. In context of Town Plan Scheme 8, we've got to a point where I think is as good as we can get. Any future amendments will probably start the day after the Minister signs it, Mr. Mayor. And those amendments will be available to anybody who lives in our great city to say, well, I'd like to do this on my property. And I'm sure that our professional staff, in looking at all of the best planning principles that exist, will say this is how you go about it if you require an amendment to this Town Plan Scheme 8. On the basis of all the work that we've done so far in this council and the professional provision that's been given to us by our staff, the consultation, the toing and froing, I think tonight can be a point where we say, yes, we're ready to move forward and move forward indeed in front of a lot of other councils in the southwest. So for the executive recommendation, I ask councillors to support that recommendation on the basis that this journey ends here to some extent and begins tomorrow to another. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McCleary. Speaker against? Councillor Hayward. You propose an amendment? Yep.
That's it. Thank you. Yeah, I did send one through earlier. Is the minute taker have that one, or do I need to read it out? I apologise.
Read it out. I think you sent an email to the councillors, Councillor Hayward, but not to the officers.
Oh, I sent it to the officers as well, sir, but that's no problem.
Question please, Mr Mayor.
Sure.
Mr Mayor, would this be an alternative because it's...
I want to hear the amendment first, Councillor McCreary, then I'll make a ruling on it.
Thank you.
So the amendment, as proposed, Mr Mayor, is on the screen. The revised schedule of modifications at Appendix DPD S6 to amend the local planning strategy and local planning scheme 8, particularly in the zoning table at clause 17 and schedules 5, additional zone developments requirements to ensure no loss of existing land use and development permissibilities as they presently exist under the local planning scheme 7 and for land in the proposed mixed-use commercial, mixed-use residential, service, commercial, light industry and general industry zones, and the inclusion of additional new land use and development outcomes such as residential and mixed-use development under mixed-use commercial residential zones are to remain as proposed.
Okay, thanks. Just take a seat, Councillor Hayward. Yeah, on the basis of what you're proposing is a substantial change from the recommendation we have before us, I'm not accepting it. So I suggest you vote against what the recommendation is, and then if you wish to foreshadow this amendment. Is there someone prepared to move? We have Councillor Kelly, Councillor McCleary.
I'll speak against it. Are you calling
Go ahead,
for a speak
go
for
ahead.
or against?
Go ahead, against.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I would like to foreshadow an alternative motion, and that has been outlined to you as the failed attempt to bring a change there. Basically, the reason I'm speaking against it is because I think there are certain land uses across the city that are securely located and securely entrenched in Scheme 7 that are potentially at some risk under Scheme 8. So an example of that might be a car yard, for instance, that's leased and that sits empty for 6 months, then cannot continue as a car yard without the express permission of the council. So in other words, we're creating a rod for industry's back, and they've got to come back to us. Now, I don't see any danger in us being able to have a proposed amendment. If I get the opportunity, the alternative motion to speak to that, I'll explain why I think that is a better position for us to be in. But there are a number of those. It's not just one or two. I think that what we're trying to do today is come up with a plan to move forward for our city, and what we don't want to do is create a plan that actually creates more work and more logistics and more red tape for people who are in business and want to develop in our city. What we want to do is have a can-do attitude to be able to make sure that things can move ahead in Bunbury, and I think that some of the parts of Scheme 8 could potentially be improved by what I'm proposing, and on that basis I think that what we should do is vote this down and then look to the alternative recommendation motion to be able to see those benefits flow through to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be speaking for the executive recommendation. This whole local planning strategy and town planning scheme has been with us for many, many years now. It's been thoroughly examined. It's been in the community for many opportunities for various organisations as well as individuals to make comment. We've received around 100 submissions on it, and as our officers have pointed out, there is very few objecting in principle to what is being proposed tonight. So my view is it's been exhaustively examined. Tonight, when we're making a decision on this, we've had one person speak, make a presentation. The rest of the development industry is silent. The rest of the town planning industry is silent, which indicates to me strong support for what we're proposing to do tonight. This also is not the final decision maker. Tonight we recommend to the Minister to approve this. I'm very satisfied as Mayor of this great city that we have given every opportunity to our community to make comment. And we've looked at countless reports, workshops. Every member of council should be very well informed about where we are tonight, ready to make this decision. And I'm very relaxed with the professionalism of our officers and also the fact that other parts of the development industry, including town planning profession, has sought not to make comment, which indicates to me strong support for what's being proposed. Is there a speaker, another speaker against? Councillor Kelly. I'll put it all in favour, please indicate. Those against? 2, that's carried. Thanks, Councillor Cook. Thank you. We move on to 10.4.3. Can I have someone move the recommendation, please? Councillor Kelly, seconder. Councillor Cook. Councillor Kelly.
Not at this stage, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cook. Is there a speaker against this? Oh, sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a speaker against this recommendation? I'll put it all in favour. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 11.1, someone prepared to move that leave application? Councillor Jones, Councillor Giles, all in favour? That's carried unanimously, thank you. (14.1). Can I have someone move that we treat this item as urgent business? Councillor McCleary, Councillor Giles, all in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. Can someone move that we move behind closed doors, please? Councillor Jones, Councillor Giles, all in favour? That's carried unanimously. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now dealing with some confidential items. Thanks very much for your attendance. We'll reconvene when we've dealt with these items, and I'll give you the